Hey y'all, I'm Heather. I am a wife and a mother and an insurance agency owner, a friend, and a PTA advocate. I am so excited to talk about all of the things that I find most precious here within our community, within our lives, and within our faith, friendships, and relationships. Here on Heather's Most Precious. So tell me about your podcast.
Okay, so the podcast is called How Would You Rate Your Pain? And it's featuring stories of resilience, encountering challenges and adversities, different types of pain, and how people get through them, what's helpful to them, what's the hardest part. The hope is that, for people that are listening who have experienced something similar, it's, just encouraging space, or maybe someone's at the beginning of their journey. And I think kind of at a meta level, it's helpful, I think, for us in society that if we hear a story that, is so different than our lives, it just kind of helps us humanize a different kind of struggle. And maybe it eventually increases the collective empathy in the world would be the hope.
Absolutely. And that's what we all need more of, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I think we really want that. Mm-hmm. We look at the research on loneliness and people's, desire for belonging. I think the thing that keeps us apart is, we need those empathy bridges everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. I'd often think how much better the world would be if people would not only engage more in a more appropriate way, in a more kind way, but if there was empathy. When, yes, we will never know what other people are going through, but if we can say, oh, that must be difficult, and treat people in a way that would allow them to be seen and heard and known in a way that was not isolating because of their situation or circumstance, but did want to bring them in more inclusive.
I agree. And I think, one of the things I remember from being little, we used to watch a lot of the Jacques Cousteau, videos where he would go with the boat and, go under the water deep or, these little islands where, hardly anybody had ever been at that time. Mm-hmm. And, one of the reasons he was doing it was so that people would love creatures of the sea and want to protect them and love beautiful places and want them to keep thriving and holding life. And so I think we do that a little bit, with our storytelling in this way to help us love and connect with and want to protect and care for people that, aren't in our little circle, our sphere of our world.
Of course. And oftentimes, unless you start to step out, right, you're not going to know. Just like without watching those videos, you wouldn't understand. There would be a lot of probably anxiety of the unknown, or if you came into contact with a creature, you would be terrified instead of, brings the acknowledgement that this isn't scary, it just was unknown, but just now different. I know it is different, and that doesn't make it less than. And it can be brought in to our circle, but we have to be aware and be able to step out of what we know, which is sometimes scary.
I think so. Maybe it's like the first step is scary, and then you kind of settle in and it feels really good.
It does. And I don't know anyone who has included someone or has had a conversation with someone or tried to empathize with someone that looks or acts different than they do and has ever been like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Most of the time it's so rewarding.
Absolutely. I find it rewarding.
Yes, absolutely. So y'all are hearing from my very special guest and new friend, Tiffany Bartell. And she shared with you about her podcast, which is newer, coming out soon. How do you rate your pain? How would you rate your pain?
How would you rate your pain?
How would you rate your pain? And I love that title so much. We Are Connected by Michael. I loved when you shared that, because how often do we hear that in a doctor's office after an accident, whatever that looks like. And a lot of people do want to rate so that we know how to how we know how to help you.
Yeah, and I think it's just so subjective, because, I think you're a mom too. And so, having children versus breaking a bone, or grief, or, the pain of leaving a job or situation you love or a community you love to move to another good situation. There's still pain in there. And so it's so nuanced and so individual.
It is. But across the board, as you've just shared, it doesn't matter if it is medical or grief or happy to happy. There is a piece of us that it is painful. It does hurt sometimes to grow and move and or deal with an unwanted circumstance. And so you have allowed a space where people are able to share and celebrate the victory of growth. And as you've alluded to, which I also would love for this to be, is to help other people that are either starting their journey or have sailed through their journey or on the other side or are in the midst of it and just kind of feel stuck.
Yeah, because I think that if it feels like someone else has gone through something even remotely similar or something hard, it's almost like those like footprints in the snow. It's like, okay, well, even if I don't land exactly on it or it's not exactly my size, at least something's broken the surface and I can see a way forward.
Absolutely.
And I think too, it kind of knits us together in like that common humanity that keeps us from being isolated. Because when you're suffering, I think you feel so isolating. It feels like you're the only one. Everybody else is like, the world is still turning and you're the only person stuck. And I think, throughout our lives, we're stuck in different ways at different times. And it's just part of the human experience is facing adversity or having pain or having suffering or discomfort, but then also having joy and love and peace.
And finding the balance.
Oh, yes, trying.
Yes, always. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Not only do we not want to be alone, but just hearing something, words have a funny way of resonating with people. And we did not start this today thinking, oh, somebody is going to, with a Patty and wherever is going to hear this and it's going to hit our heartstrings. That's not, but how often do our words translate to somebody and just resonate with them in a way that does bring healing and hope and offers the grace that they need to be able to move forward or to be able to acknowledge, because often you have to acknowledge the situation, the grief, that whatever is hurting in order to bring the healing and in order to move forward and figure out, do I need help to be able to move forward? Is this therapy? Is this talking? Or is this a doctor? What does this look like? Or is this me saying, okay, I acknowledge this and figuring out how to move forward and navigate this season?
Yeah. So, I've told you before, I'm also a therapist, and, I think the formula for a lot of people is, if I want to do this in a healthy way, I have to be able to say, okay, what's happening for me right now inside? What am I experiencing? What am I feeling? Can I describe it? Can I identify it? And, what do I need? And then when you're ready, where do I want to be? And how would I get there? And because I think sometimes we want to skip some of those steps. We want to say, oh, it's a bad day. I feel upset. I'm going to think about something happy. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, but did you need comfort? Did you need processing? Did you need justice? What do you need, to resource for that experience that you're having? And sometimes it's just a momentary thing. And sometimes it's a little bit more, professional help or other situations that you need to tap into. That I think we have to do all the steps. We don't get to skip anything. And it would be so nice if we could.
Yes. And what happens when we do skip that? Unfortunately, I am the person who identifies with what you said, because I will always find the gratitude typically within the situation. So if I can grab the gratitude, it's not that I'm intentionally repressing something, but that's what happens. And then all of a sudden,
it surprises you.
It does. Yeah. And it's the worst surprise.
Yeah.
And you're engulfed then by this wave of grief and darkness that now, how do you navigate something that you didn't know that you were pushing away?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I always say that your superpower is your kryptonite, right? So, even gratitude, if that's something is such a skill and you're so good at that muscle's so strong, being able to sit in pain and being able to be with yourself, that's going to be hard. And I think I tend towards being pretty happy, kind of wake up, kind of, with high energy. And so I think that being still is something I've had to learn to be. I think that being angry when it's appropriate. I just didn't ever learn to be angry. And there's a lot of health in anger when it's like a good, healthy situation. And then you have to figure out, how long do I want to sit there? Yeah, I need to sit there. I have to honor it. How long? How long before it's not actually good for me anymore? Right. And so yeah, whatever our answer is, or our go-to, we always have to be like, okay, what's underdeveloped? If I'm really good at finding the silver lining or looking at the bright side or being grateful, when do I need to sit with myself? And do I need someone to sit with me, with myself?
Right.
Does that help me?
To help me navigate that. That makes sense. And as you alluded to, it is so hard when you are good at being happy, when you're good at hiding, or you're very similar in those ways. It's so unlike us to feel the negative feelings, the harshness of some of the seasons. So I feel like in effort for us to navigate it well, it feels like we have to find the gratitude and we have to be happy. And if we aren't, it's against the grain and it doesn't feel natural. And sometimes it's not only being uncomfortable in that season, but for me, like this, I just walked through a pretty rough season within my kind of accident journey. And I was fearful of sitting too long, not intentionally, but is this going to completely take over, right? Will this forever shadow everything that I do, or will I be able to crawl out of where I am?
Yeah.
And that was a scary place to be, because it is not like me to sit in the dark and the hurt and all of the feelings that felt a little contradictory, but continue to be aware. And I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere different. But you're right, knowing that I need to feel this. I need to get this out so that I can move forward, and this doesn't become another hole that I fall into. Because I think quite often, especially if we push something under the rug, we're eventually going to trip and fall down into it, and we're not going to be able to.
When we least expect it.
Yes, yeah. And it's going to be inconvenient when it happens, right? Now, you also mentioned that people need to identify the problem in order to figure out, how are we feeling? Why is it not what we want to feel? How can we move forward? What if someone cannot identify, or feels like they cannot identify what the problem is?
Yeah, so I think that, I think as Americans especially, we just don't sit with ourselves very much. Our lives are so busy, so fast-paced. I know, just talking about today, both of us had multiple things stacked up, places we've already been, and I know, at least for me, places I still have to go today. Yeah. And so we live at such a fast speed, and so I think that, it's hard to know until we're kind of, 0 to 60. We're at a 75, and we're like, I don't know why I don't feel good or what doesn't feel good. So I think, one thing that helps me is I have a lot of what I call people mirrors. So I have people who know me, who are in my life, that can, I can sit with them and they can give me feedback that I trust. And I always like to think feedback is a gift, right? So if it fits and if it's, seems appropriate, then I'll keep it. And if not, I have permission to discard it. But I think that, having people mirrors, people that love you and know you well, who can say, hey, I'm noticing this, or are you actually okay, can help to kind of catch us before we might catch ourselves. But I do think as a therapist, a lot of people come wandering in and they say, I'm just not happy, and I should be. There's no reason for me to be unhappy. Or they say, I have a lot of reasons not to feel good right now, and I don't know what to do with that. And so I think sometimes it's, really healthy to go in. I mean, you go to the doctor sometimes and say, I'm tired all the time and I don't feel good. And then you let them sort it with you. And then you have to go home and apply all of the treatment and the exercises, or, take your medicine, whatever. And therapy is not so much different than that, in that, we can sort it. And, my friends and I say we're stupid about our own stuff, so if you're in the middle of it, of course you're not objective. And, if it's your kids or your family or your life, you're the least objective person. And so I think we're usually not as self-aware as we like to think we are. But we're also just humans, and humans need other humans to get through. We just can't do life alone.
Yeah. We need our community and our village.
Yes.
And I love that you brought up having the people in your life that can stand far enough on the outside to be able to see in without standing so far away that they're hurtful with their words or their actions. You know that they're coming out of a place of love, even if their accountability for you is hard to hear. I think when you purposefully have the intentional relationships or the intentional people that you know, they love me, they know me, they see me, and I can trust what they're saying. Because so many times that is kind of the roadblock before we crash. I see something, this is your warning sign. Let me help you navigate this.
And sometimes we listen and sometimes we don't. Sometimes they can call, they can call emergency services when we get to their side and say, okay, And I think that's an important component too of your community, is that there's no judgment, because sometimes we're just not in a place where we can act on feedback all the time. And there has to be space in your life to make mistakes. There has to be space in your relationships to make mistakes and to have people help pick yourself back up again. And I think when we're going through hard things and we're afraid of getting lost in them, like you were talking about, I think we need people to kind of anchor us down and say, I'll hold on to you. If you feel like you might lose some of yourself, like, we'll hold on to you. We'll remind you who you are. And you don't have to keep all the parts of yourself together, through this part.
That's such a beautiful, I'll hold on to you. That's just such a beautiful analogy and beautiful verbiage to go with the scene, right? You can picture that in your head. You can picture the people that you do want to be your anchors and that you, and I think so often you've mentioned life moving so fast that we can't catch up. We're always like, why don't we feel well? Or, why do I feel overwhelmed? Well, I don't know, because you're doing too much. You don't say no. And that's very much directed at me.
I feel it feels very personal.
It does, doesn't it? And so I just think often we sometimes put ourselves in positions to where it's like we don't want to be inconveniencing to other people. So we're going to recluse and we will figure this out on our own, when that is not how we're meant to live. I mean, we look at historically and now how other countries, right, even homes are small and y'all all share a room and you're together all the time and you're meant to live life alone, not be in these huge houses completely separated without feelings and without we'll get together for the happy times but don't bother me if it's not, is how sometimes life goes, or we're moving so fast we cannot be intentional enough. But how do we change because I do feel like it's collective.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we change that in us when we feel like when we are going through a hard time, we do not want to be an inconvenience to someone else, or we don't want them to get stuck with us, right?
Yeah, so I think, one thing that I've seen over and over as I practice, and then I think too in my personal life, is, when you share, let's say you share, a little bit of your pain with somebody that you love, maybe 10% of how you're feeling lands on them. It doesn't land as 10. It lands at like 5. And then they share with you and it doesn't land as its full weight because you're not them, you're not living it. And it feels good and it's actually healthy. The research shows that when we're doing for others, it's actually good for our mental health when we're helping support, not to an unhealthy extreme, but like when it's a mutual relationship or we feel like we're contributing to somebody else, it's actually good for our well-being. Yeah. And so then you walk away from that, everybody's 5%, even if you shared, it doesn't land as the same weight. And so I think that, too, we have to be really skillful with our empathy. Empathy can be like very overwhelming at times. And so, I do primarily trauma therapy, and I really have had to, learn to send people stories with them, and I trust my clients with their story. And then when they bring it back, we'll work on it again. But I trust them to take it with them because I can't hold all the stories of the people that I see, and they don't need me to. They belong to them, and we work on them together. And so I think we have to kind of think about let me do what I can do and not try to do things that I can't do. So what's helped me, I think, as a fairly helping person, which I think we both have that, is, we can only be responsible for what we can control. And all I can control is what belongs to me. My time, my thoughts, my feelings, my resources, my emotions, all those things. And so I can't be responsible for somebody else's choices or their emotions or their thoughts or their actions, and because I can't control them. And so then if I shrink myself back into my role and say, okay, this is what I can do. I can help them in this way, but I can't be with them all the time. I can't, take away their pain because I can't control that. But I can walk with them and sit with them as I can. And to give what you can, it's the difference between, I always say, paying cash or credit card, right? So if you were going to give somebody, on a street corner, you could give them $5, but you wouldn't give them your credit card. Because, it's a stranger, anybody, you wouldn't give them their credit card because that bill's going to come due to you. And emotionally, when we give what we don't have, it's like swiping that credit card. And the bill's going to come due to you and due to your family. And so we're taking out resources that we don't actually have to give. And that's not a gentle way to live life. Right. Yeah, because there has to be one set of rules for everybody. Yeah. If other people, need to thrive and other people deserve joy, we have to thrive and we have to, be able to have joy and contentment too.
Yes, even though we have the servant heart.
Yeah.
Which makes it hard to navigate some of the seasons because and I don't think most people are like, here, hold my stuff. But there are those people who do.
Absolutely.
And empathizers naturally want to do that. Whether we want to or not, we're going to. Like, it's just going to pile on and we're going to navigate. But I love how you are able to so clearly separate. But it sounds like it's probably a daily giving up, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant.
It's a set of questions. It's a set of questions, which is, what's my role? If it's my children, I'm there.
Yes.
Yeah. But if it's my neighbor, I'm going to give appropriately, in that way and over a specific amount of time to people who aren't in my family. It's a time limited resource because my family deserves the best of me, not the leftovers. And so I try to ask myself, what's my role? Am I actually helping? I remember that when I got married, my husband and I have been married for, I think it's going to be 22 years this year. And I had a best friend, still a good friend from my childhood, very young. I think we became friends when I was 7. And so she's just had a rough time, a lot of rough things. And so I used to always send money, because she would get in a pickle one way or the other, and I just send money. And about like 4 years into being married, my husband said, I want you to always send her money if you want to. And I want you to always feel like you can support her, and I support you doing that. But I want you to ask yourself if some of the ways you're doing these things are actually helping her and who it's for. And so I think part of what I was doing for her was for me, because I felt so powerless to help her in her life. So I was just, trying to do things that would make me feel better about her present day, this week situation. So I had to think about, like, what does she actually need from me? How can I actually be a good friend? What actually would help her? And shift a little bit in my strategy, which didn't feel good.
Right.
Because it was kind of my security. And so I think we can disempower people sometimes by how we help them while we're, wearing ourselves out and becoming exhausted.
Which is not good, like you said, for your clan, the people who matter most to you. And
because we know they'll forgive us.
We do. And there's often balancing between not only the empathizer or not, but between our work and home lives and all of the other pieces of us that go outside of the home. The show works on balance a lot of that's what I'm continually striving for, is good balance between everything that I do. I want to do it all. If I'm not serving in a lot of ways, I don't feel like I'm whole. And I want to feel that way. I want to help people. I genuinely do. But I do also know there needs to be, for me, God and family. And then it comes work, and then it comes everything else. and just trying to keep that mindset, because as you know, right, when you're in the therapy session, you're thinking of what you're doing then, and your work matters because you're doing your work not just to help, your client at the time. I do the insurance because I love what I do. I want to help people, I want to help my community, but I'm doing it for my family, right? We work for our families.
Absolutely.
Or else nobody would do it.
Yeah.
Right? If we're being honest. But so often that screams louder. Our work duties, our duty as a therapist, as an agency owner, whatever, scream louder than our children, and then our husbands, and then our other duties within our family units. Absolutely. And it's so unfortunate that we live in a country, I think that's for me the worst part about where we live. It's that in other countries, work is such a small piece. When you go out to people, you don't talk about work. When you go, right? And here it's like work is everything and then everything else. And I really wish that our minds would shift a little bit, that our perspective would be able to change to, I think we're good at saying priorities and in the correct order. Yeah. But it often feels hard to obtain those.
Yeah. Operationalize it, like make it actually look like that. My doctor told me something last year that I, like, as soon as I left, immediately texted to all my girlfriends. He said, Tiffany, after a certain amount of hours of work a week, you're not turning a profit anymore. You're making an emotional donation.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I need to write that down. Sir, can you say it one time? He's like, what? I'm like, say what you just said. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And I thought, like, wow, if you can do the math that way, it changes everything. And I was reading something one time, and it said, that the research shows you are as happy as you ever will be and have as much of a sense of well-being as you ever will have, as you do right now, today. So if your life and the way you feel in your life is today the way you want to feel forever, carry on. But if you imagine that it's going to feel different after, you wrap up this big case, or I finish a trauma intensive, or we get past first quarter, or I get past this big presentation I have, whatever we think, that mirage, it'll just keep marching on, and you'll feel exactly the way you feel today forever, unless you change today. And so I think, you asked before, what do we do? Well, we do something different today.
Yeah. Something that may change the trajectory and make it worth it.
Yeah, because, and it may not be that your life changes. I think we have so much fear, that FOMO of like, but what if I could do something great? Right. What if this new project would be amazing? And, I think that maybe you'll still do that project. Maybe you'll just do it different. Maybe it'll be even better.
And what is that? In all of us, we do have that fear of, and not just missing out, but thinking that we can be better or we can make more of an impact. And what I'm not saying is like, you listening, don't make an impact. You're not good. Not what I'm saying.
No, we're literally podcast hosts. Like, we're trying to do something. Yeah, we
want to make a difference. But so often it is derived out of fear of not, rather than knowing a lot of the actions we take every day are because we want to serve, we want to help, we want to be better for ourselves. But there is a lot of that fear that also can creep in, whether we want it to or not.
Yeah, I think that there's a real struggle in today's society to feel contented or enough. Whether it's a little bit of imposter syndrome mixed in there, but I think I was talking to someone about this the other day, and, people who are highly successful, who are doing what we would consider big things in the world and actually affecting big change, if you ask them if they're satisfied with themselves and if they feel successful and if they feel like they're changing the world, they wouldn't say yes. So you don't know it when you get there. I think a successful life of service or helping or integrity or whatever it is, that you hold dear or most precious.
Yes.
I think that if you do, again, if you do it today, like if you do what's in front of you today, like we're having this conversation today, and then you're going to share it with, your precious audience, and that's enough for today. We did it. We met our values, and, live to our principles today. And so if today was the last day I had, it was enough.
It has to be enough. Yeah.
It was enough.
Yeah. And that is a choice of believing that what you're doing makes a difference for you and that you are, you're right, content. There has to be that contentment and not the fear of, did I do enough? No, I did. Being confident in the decisions that you made. Now, does that mean that you are addressing things maybe differently in the beginning of your day? Okay, I have all of these 37 things that need to be done. As I'm prioritizing them, are these things that are going to make today better? Are these things that are going to make my clients happier? Are these things that are going to help?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then maybe those get put to the bottom of the list so that we can make sure that the things that we are doing are intentionally good and are truly priorities. Because a lot of the priorities we feel are chaos and noise.
Yeah.
And they're not going to bring any value, but they do seem to take up a lot of space.
Yeah, I think that one of my areas of kryptonite is I love new projects and I love, good things. And I think saying no to good things is so hard. So then if we can kind of know that about ourselves and just say, okay, I know that it's really hard for me to say no to good things. So my husband has this saying he says to me regularly, and he says, Tiffany, only do what only you can do. And so I think that's one of kind of my vetting tools I've been trying to utilize is, do I need to do this? Just because something good could be done or should be done, is that for me? Because there's, so many people in the world that have, a desire or a need to do something or be productive or help. It doesn't always have to be me. And that can help me sometimes to say, okay, because I think we convince ourselves that if I don't do it, no one will.
Right.
And I don't think that's true. I think people are better than that.
They are. And the truth is, if you continue to do it, no, you don't give anybody the opportunity to step in. And that's often, we're the same in that. I often feel like, well, I'll just do it. It's easier if I do it because I know how to do it. And then I'm not, again, inconveniencing anyone else. But yeah, I'm taking up space for someone else who really wants the opportunity to give in that way. Sometimes we are standing in the way. If I don't do it, if I can get out of the way, someone else will step in. Someone else will do that.
They'll learn because we had to learn.
We did.
We didn't, get to do the things that we do, without having someone giving us a chance to kind of like muddle around it a little bit. And I think as you were talking, it just came to my mind that like the place that we can be to reprioritize the to-dos, I think it goes back to our connections in our family, right? Yes. Like if we're taking the time to be deeply connected, then we know that we are enough in the places that matter the most. And so if I know that like my marriage is thriving, if I know that my children trust me and can come to me, if I know that my friends feel that I love them, and then those, if I have those cups filled, I think work can shrink a little bit because I'm not trying to pour my productivity into my relationship areas.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And I want to make sure the audience heard that we are not as perfect as we are today. We haven't always been this great.
No, I think, and I don't feel perfect, and I don't feel balanced, and I don't feel, as healthy as I'd like to be. I think, so I just don't know if we'll ever know. I don't know if you, like, even if you, followed Erickson and actualized, I don't know that you would know that you got there because, I think we're just trying. And
we are. And there will always still, even if majority of the things that we do, we are doing well, we're never going to feel good enough for ourselves. I think there's a level of perfection, a level of consistency, and just we are always going to want more than where we are. And that's not just meant to be financially driven or anything like that. We are always going to want more of ourselves than we can even give. It's almost unrealistic, some of the expectations, at least I know I set for myself, and I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, no, I'm the worst boss. So I'm pretty much self-employed. I do, I have my private practice, and I do some other things, teaching, and I'm a professor and different things, And I was telling my friend last year, I was like, man, I would not work for me. Like, I have not given myself a PTO schedule.
Yeah.
And I have not, decided how many days off a year I get. I don't know if I've given myself a raise this year. Like, I would not work for me. And so I actually flew to where she was living and spent a weekend with her. And we drew up employment contracts for ourselves, with ourselves. Of like, this is how much work we do. These are our job responsibilities. This is whatever. Because it's easy to add on a podcast and add on a lecture and add on a speaking engagement, and add on, I could pick up this graduate class and do this and this and this. And it's like, you wouldn't work for somebody who kept adding new duties that you had to figure out on there. You'd say, what are you going to take off my plate? And so then we have to have that conversation with ourselves too, because I do like to do things well. And I like learning. I'm a lifetime learner. But also, the thing I'm not good at is rest and stillness. So that's my growth edge. If I was to give myself a performance review, it would be needs to learn how to be still and say no.
I'm there too. We got the same review. Wow, it's so nice. And I think too, just because you have a desire to do something.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to do it. Doesn't mean you're being called to do it. Just because we want to do it doesn't mean we're called to do it. And once again, saying that for a reason, preach to the choir, sister. So often we think, oh, I would be great at this. Yes, you may be skilled in that area. You may have a desire to complete the project or say yes to that engagement offer. But is that something that you are meant to do right now? We have so much more life to live. It doesn't mean if we don't do it now, we are so used to the saying, don't miss the opportunity.
Yeah, and what do you think would happen if you did it? Like, what do we imagine will feel like, or what do we imagine will happen in our lives if we do that one thing? Right. What does it change? And I think that, I think it's good to have energy and excitement for new things. I think we just have to hone it. And I think harnessing that is, it's a growth edge for me.
It is. And realizing if we say yes to this opportunity, how much of the other parts of us is going to fall.
Yeah. So
what are we sacrificing to say yes here?
Well, and I mean, I hear myself tell my clients, yes and no are two sides of the same coin. So whenever you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. What are you consistently saying yes to and consistently saying no to? So if you're consistently saying yes to work or others' needs or all of that, you're saying no to yourself, no to your family, no to the people that pour into you. And so you got to flip the coin. You got to keep flipping it. It's got to land different ways sometimes. And I mean, it's really easy to just like stick it down on the table and say, this is the right way to be. This is a good life. What do I want people to say about me, at my funeral? Well, you're not, I mean, you've got so much life to live, hopefully, before then. What do you want to feel about yourself today? What about the people who love you most? What do you want them to feel from you right now? And I'm very externally motivated. Peer pressure works great on me. So whenever I want to do something, I always get friends to do it with me. So I actually have a texting exercise group, and we've been texting each other every day for, I think it's been 11 years. When someone exercises, they just put done in there, and I'm very externally motivated. So I think sometimes, if you really love other people and if you really prioritize the needs of others, use it. Use that and say, okay, well, guess what? The people who love me best need me healthy.
Yeah.
They need me rested. They need me whole. And so if I give all these pieces of myself and all my time and don't give to myself, I can't show up for the people because I have to have my personhood secure. And I think that's one thing. I think being a therapist kind of saves me because, the job is me. The instrument's me. I have to be a healthy person or I can't give good services and I'm going to hurt people. And so that constant need to like stay grounded, stay balanced, take time off, you know, do those things. I think it's a good career because it kind of puts bounds on my life and my time and my decisions.
In something you wouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Had the experience not been there, and had you not had the realization that in order to be able to do this well, these are the things that I need. Now, I know we've shared a lot of kind of snippets of advice throughout, but for someone who is currently walking through just a really hard season, what are the 3 steps that you would advise them to take to find healing and hope?
Yeah, so I think, you know, the first would be to just ask for help. You know, don't try to do it alone. And if you don't have good help in your inner circle, don't be afraid to reach out for a professional, because everyone deserves a safe space. And ideally, we want to have that inner circle. Sometimes our inner circle's also on the struggle bus, you know, or hasn't done their work yet. And so, you know, sometimes it's good to get objective, you know, outside support for that. So I'd say get some support. Remind yourself that nothing lasts forever, right? And so even with some of my clients that have chronic illness, you know, this particular moment of pain, this particular surgery, this particular procedure, this particular flare-up or whatever, it's time limited. You won't feel exactly the same way you feel today in this moment forever. And so sometimes we have to kind of like just take a deep breath and say, okay, maybe I just need to breathe through that. And then I think, you know, depending on the type of struggle, you know, figuring out what resources you need to move into, you know, a place of well-being, because everyone can have a good quality of life no matter their circumstances. You know, for some of my clients, the situation they're facing is very specific and local, and like they got to get through this breakup or they got to get through this loss of a job or whatever it is. For other people, it is, you know, more chronic, or it is, you know, a lot of abuse and trauma, and it's going to take a minute to get through, and then we can't erase it from your story. But I really believe that, you know, with the right support and help, that everyone can get to a place where they can have a good quality of life. And so just to kind of like realize that you're worth it, it might take a little bit more time than you like, and not to try to go it alone.
Right. No, I think that's wonderful. And I know we've talked about your both your podcast and your practice. What is the name of your practice for those who are here and would love to hear more?
Yeah, so it's here in Chattanooga. I work out of the Transformation Center, and it has several locations, but I'm in the Chattanooga location, and I see mostly like older adolescents and adults, and very rewarding. And there's I think everybody deserves support, and I wish we would normalize going to get, you know, help for our mental health the way that we normalize getting your blood pressure checked, or, you know, getting your bronchitis, you know, checked out. We have urgent cares, we have hospitals, we have clinics, we have buses in some cities, you know, that check you out, and I think we have done so much work on destigmatizing mental health. But I think if you don't feel good, if you wake up in the morning and you don't feel happy, and you feel heavy or sad or angry or whatever, that's your brain not feeling well. And so you should get that checked out. Just the same as you should check it out if your foot hurts every day, you know. Check it out if your mind hurts every day. If your heart hurts, you know, get that checked out, because that's no way to live.
No, it's not. And there are so many great resources.
Absolutely.
That want to help, and people that want to help. And so that is wonderful. I love that. Well, Tiffany, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. But before we go, I have to know, what do you find most precious?
I thought about that as I was driving here, and I think it's going to sound so cliche, but I promise it's true. I think I find people.
Yes.
I think I find people most precious. The people that I know and love, the people that I serve in my practice, and and just, people that we meet, you know, and I've enjoyed talking to you, and this has been so much fun. And I feel like I need to go home and write down some of the things that we've talked about, because I'm like, all right, Tiffany, like, little reminders. You have some things to tweak. But I think it's people.
I love that so much. And you're right, whether you know them or not, whether they're strangers today, may know them in the future, there's so much we can learn from each other if we build the community and if we choose to engage with people, and especially when we choose to walk alongside people that need help, that we can, if you are in a healthy place, to give back to someone else, to come alongside and shoulder the weight. Like, I would encourage you to do that. And this has also been, this is like the greatest therapy session of all time, right? But it's always neat to engage with people, even people that are like-minded, like you and I are, and see things pretty similarly. And we are very similar in our personalities as well.
Yes.
But even that, even being able to engage in a conversation where you are able to pull from each other things that either are now said in a different way, or there could be something that someone has heard for years, and it's finally said in a way that makes them stop. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I get it now. And that's such a beautiful thing. The light bulb moment is so beautiful to be able to then bring in and figure out how that helps your journey more peaceful, which I love. And we actually didn't talk about this. Our last, I guess Thursday's episode, this last one, our 20th episode we put out was on grief. And what's amazing is that so many of the pieces of this that you have shared, I actually talked about in that, just walking through a season where so many people, from family to friends to clients, are just hurting, just in a season of hurt and heartache, and wherever they are in their journey, it's just tough.
So heavy.
Walking through it is, whether it's an unwanted or abrupt divorce, whether it's today, March 10th is February 10th is the anniversary of my accident where I was hit. Traumaversary is what I would call it. And that kind of changed my life, right? Put kind of a roadblock in there and changed what I thought life would look like and what it has looked like and what it has looked like for my village and community. And there are people that have lost loved ones, and people that are now having to figure out job losses, which have affected the financial stability of their family.
Yeah.
And there are so many, or just people that are going through just a sad time. And whether they know why or whether they're unaware of what has caused this, they are very aware that this is not who they are, and are trying to get through. So it is, and I feel like too, seasonally, January, February, right? The dark, the rainy, the lack of sun. Yeah. It shadows a little bit of everything too. And so these are kind of more depressive months as well. So once again, if y'all are in need of help, Tiffany is here able to serve. If there is something that we can do for you here, even within Heather's Most Precious, would love the opportunity to hear your story, to speak with you, to help offer some encouragement and hope. As always, we hope that you have a wonderful week. Choose to be kind, choose to be grateful, choose to encourage. And we'll see you next week on another episode of Heather's Most Precious. Bye, y'all.
Heather's Most Precious is brought to you with love by the Hendrickson Agency, an insurance agency serving all of Georgia and Tennessee. The Hendrickson Agency, properly protecting your most precious possessions. Support for Heather's Most Precious is provided by Study.com, which offers SAT and ACT study materials and even has resources for AP and college credit courses. Listeners of Heather's Most Precious get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level with offer code PRECIOUS. Just go to Study.com and use offer code PRECIOUS at checkout. Heather's Most Precious is produced by Chattanooga Podcast Studios and is part of the Podnooga Network. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of Heather's Most Precious.